problems with relationship fatigue that we may all be dealing with during this period of COVID. And is it possible that we may be spending too much time with the people we love and care about, and that may be creating a level of stress and anxiety and challenges within the personal relationships we have? So I'm reading again, as you know, lots of reading subscriptions and things to keep me up to date with what science is telling us in the latest in terms of what we might want to share with our Live with Tony audience, and how do we keep up with the Maximum Memory Mastery online course and research and material to make that as current and as proactive as we can, and the work that we're now doing on the elements of brain health. Well, here we go. In the March issue of the Harvard Health Letter. So now we have the March issue of the Harvard Health Letter with a whole article on coping with relationship fatigue. And it talks about the stress that relationships may bounce into one another in confined spaces. We may not have the space that we're used to. We may not be going out as often, and therefore not seeing the people that we care and love from period to period, but in fact all day long. We each have our stressful moments, so we each have our points during the day when we're in a moment of stress. We each have our space, where I talk about, space quarters, and do you have your own space in your house, whether it be a one-room studio or be it a two-bedroom or what it might be? Do each of the residents within that space have their own place where they can just go hide and be themselves and just do their own thing at their own pace and at their own time? And the reverse, do we isolate people because we're distressed and we just don't want to talk to them? And now we go in reverse, where people feel that they're isolated and that there's no one that they can talk to, or there's no one that they have friends that they've cut off, and especially the kids, where they feel that their playmates and those that they went out and let their anxieties or let their stresses and frustrations go, and then they feel isolated. And it was sad listening to a couple of news reports this morning where they're talking about kids at a school that are increasing their drug use, increasing their psychological anxiety levels, and they're paying a bigger price for this than anything, and even the fact that there are more deaths of students not going to school than they would get if they were in COVID. Now, I'm not a scientist in getting into that, but it's a whole picture. It's the whole picture. So here, this Harvard article is talking about, so what's going on with our relationships? And so we have this issue of social interaction, and we know from today's science and research, for a good brain health and good memory and cognitive functioning, being socially active and socially interactive is one of the strengths that we have that help us build strong cognitive functioning. What about generational differences? We might have now mom and maybe grandma and grandpa at home with mom and dad with the kids, and now we each have different ways of looking at, grandpa and grandma may have a different way of looking at how we're raising the kids than mom and dad may be. And as I always said to my son and daughter, now that they had my grandchildren, I always said, just know the grandkids are always right. And they would look at me like, well, that wasn't the case when we were growing up. I said, but that's the case now. When I see what the grandkids are doing, they're always right. And mom and dad, you guys need to figure out what to do better because they can do what they want. Well, that's not really the way it works. But imagine if we were living in the same house all through the pandemic, and who's setting the rules? And by the way, the grandkids will figure out whose rules do they like and whose rules would they like to diss and put to the side. So we have all these different elements that are at play as we go through coping with relationship fatigue. And I think this Harvard health article really spells out what some of those issues are. And if you've had the pleasure of listening to my Live with Tony broadcast over the last months, I've been talking over and over again about the importance of social interactions as one of our key elements of brain health. So this week I've talked about sleep and nutrition, and now we're talking social interaction. All of the elements that are crucial for good, strong mental fitness, cognitive functioning. And how do we deal with the social interactions and the lack thereof? And we're seeing now is people feel like they've been caged, and right, we're coming to the 1 year mark, and people are just ready to just bust out of the cage. And the problem is they're breaking out of the cage. Are they properly evaluating and following the protocols of hand washing and masking and social distancing? Or are they just like, well, you know what, I'm just going to let it all hang out and just go for it, and hopefully not see a rise in death rates and a rise in serious long-term impacts. And this shows up in relationship fatigue over and over again as we have these different distances. So what can you do about this? So what are some of the elements that they at least suggest here? Some of the things I've suggested in my Live with Tony broadcast. First of all, recognize that everybody's in the same bucket. And by the way, everybody, not just in your house, but some of you, maybe your distant friends, and some of your friends that you see on Zoom, or some of the people you talk to over the phone. Just recognize we're all in this together, and it's not an isolation of, somebody is lucky and somebody's not. It's, wow, we're all together in this, and how can we learn from one another? So I have a regular call I have with my friends up in New York. I'm in Orlando, Florida. There are times when I feel that, you know what, I've got a bubble over my house in my backyard, and we've got trees and a pond and property that we can walk on that has nobody walking on it but us. And so some of my friends in New York are inside the city, and they're going out on streets with hundreds of people that are on it. So talking with other people and just getting other perspectives and recognizing we all hit our bumps at times. And the important thing is when I'm feeling that I'm hitting my bump, I'll say to my other half, hey, Ev, just know this is not a good time for me right now. Just give me a little space. Let me go hide somewhere in a corner. Maybe I'll read one of my reports. Maybe I'll listen to some music. I have some oldies music I like to listen to, especially love songs. And let me just get in a different space. So recognizing that and understanding how you fit in and may want to give people and your family and loved ones some. Everybody should have their own place in the house where they can go be alone. And you know what? It's okay. We don't have to be together every minute. I've learned in my work with Evelyn, I do some work here in our nook out in the back. Sometimes I'll go out on the lanai and I'll sit there with my laptop if the sun's not shading out the screen. And I'll sit out there, close the screen door, and just leave me be. I'll listen to the birds. I'll watch. Sometimes I see some animals walking about, and just leave me be. I'll get my work done. When I'm done, you know what? We'll come back together for lunch. Maybe we'll come back together, skip lunch, and have dinner. We always make sure we have dinner together, and we can spend some time talking. And then maybe after dinner, we may take a walk, or we just may sit there and listen to the sounds of the evening, coming back into the trees and to the forest that we have behind us. But set up your boundaries. Set up the boundaries of what's safe and what isn't. Where should I be left alone? Where should I be on board? About this, be sensitive to generational differences. I've learned in working and talking and sharing things with my grandkids. I'm a little bit older than they are. They're a whole lot younger. They have their own parents that have given their value systems. And therefore, I can't be judgmental other than just looking at it and saying, maybe I don't want to know this. Maybe there are questions I don't want to have answers to, so I don't ask them. And so there may be points of time where, as long as I think that they're being well and they're being smart about their distancing and socialization and things of that sort, and I know that they're healthy and well, then what else do I need to know at this point in time? And we all pray that this will pass, that the pandemic will have an end to it. And that creates a bit of angst in us because we get conflicting reports based on who we listen to and what scientists. So I go from Hopkins to different scientists and different organizations. And right, we say we're going to go by the science, but the science is so darn ambiguous at times. I don't know what science you go by. So almost pick which one you like and live with that one. I've read a number of science magazines over the last 3 days, And I'll tell you, there's some that talks, oh, the variants and the vaccines we've got now are going to be wonderful, and another says, hey, well, we don't know. I'm like, wait a minute, these are science magazines with writers of scientists that are all saying different things to us. So how do we deal with that, and how do we recognize it? And how do you bring that to kids? So now we have generational differences on how we process that which we hear and grab a level of hope and optimism versus pessimism. And then if we get annoyed with each other, it doesn't mean there's something wrong in the relationship. If we're getting stressed sometimes, it's the time to cut some slack. You know what? It's okay. Let's just leave it alone for a half hour. Sometimes I'll go take a bike ride. Sometimes I'll go sit on the porch and read. Just give people a little space and cut some slack out. And let go of the expectations that everything's beautiful and wonderful. So what I've learned to do is I call it put a dome over your life right now and adapt to it as best as you can. And most importantly is to improve your communication. And when I say that, improve communications about things that are bothering one another, and then just learn, and this is tough for me sometimes because I want to fix, I want to help, I want to get it done. I don't want my loved ones to hurt. But listen to them, and sometimes just use your ears and use your eyes and leave your mouth closed. And boy, if that's not tough for me, because I want to make everybody feel better. I want to make a difference. I want to help people get through this and not feel so distressed and stressed and helpless about it, because there are things that we can do. And I feel very strongly about our Maximum Memory Mastery online course as being something that offers everyone an opportunity to build the skill, but to build the elements that take you past what you need to be doing in terms of relationship fatigue. I can go on and on with some of these topics. They're so true to what we're dealing with. And when you think about relationships, it's what it's all about. We're hardwired to be social beings. And the benefits to having good, strong relationships of people you can trust and you have confidence, you know they have your back, you know that they have your care at heart, it's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. So respect the relationships you have. Don't judge people too harshly during this time. Sometimes take the higher road and say, let me be there to help you, as opposed to what can you do to help me? And it almost reminds me of John Kennedy as our president many, many years ago, saying, not ask what to do for you, but what can you do for your country? What can you do for the people that you love? And how can you help them, be a level of service to them that may make a difference in their life, which to me bounces right back to you and gives you a benefit of what your purpose and what you're doing to get through some really tough times that we do pray that there's an end to, but we don't want to be sitting around waiting for that end before we can learn some new things and build some new skills and develop some life experiences that we will be talking about forever. This will be truly an historical event of time that we will talk about forever. So to that, have a good evening. This is my Wednesday 5 o'clock hour, and we'll see you back here on Friday.